Good evening, everybody. It is Monday, May 2nd, 2022. Welcome to the May meeting of the Housing Committee for Manhattan Community Board 11. I am John Green, the chairperson of the committee. But before we begin, we have a few ground rules. It says, first of all, no one may speak unless they are granted the floor. It says, community board members, if you have a question about board business or whether to make a motion, please raise your hand through Zoom. We probably know where our raise hand buttons are with our eyes closed. We've done this so often, but it's at the bottom here of your screen. And if you have any problems, please let Marlene know, and she'll be glad to help you. Okay. Actually, questions should be on topic and brief, because the thing is that we would like to keep the meeting moving, and that would help a lot. That says the chat function should not be used for CB11 business. If there's a speaker that you would like to know, like their contact information, that's fine. But as far as about business being discussed in the meeting, that please do not use the chat for that. Members of the public, if you have a question or comment about any subject during the meeting, please raise your hand through Zoom and you will be recognized. Okay. Marlene, if you're ready, you can do roll call.
Right, you can. I'll do it right after you call the meeting to order.
Oh, well, that's correct. You have to do that. I'm sorry. The meeting is called to order at 6:36 p.m. Mm-hmm. So, Marlene, if you please.
Sure. Stephanie Arroyo. Roger Flores is excused. John Green.
Here.
Jada Heredia. Alonzo Johnson.
Here.
Rick Prinsky.
Here.
Beverly Pabon.
Present.
Dawn Sanders.
Present.
And Candy Vives Vasquez. You have a quorum, John.
Okay, thank you, Marlene. Okay, the agenda was distributed in advance. It is on our website, and if there are no objections, we will adopt the agenda. Are there any objections?
I have an objection.
I'm sorry?
I have an objection.
Okay.
In regards to the minutes, the C section, can we show that Margaret Carey and Anne-Marie Henson did not show up for the meeting? So it can be on our records that they were not present.
Okay, that can be done.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay. So, are there any other hands raised? Seeing none. The agenda is adopted with that exception. Okay, the minutes of the April meeting has been basically distributed, and so without any the adoption to I'm sorry. The agenda. Are there any objections to the agenda being adopted?
I'm sorry, did I do that backwards?
I
Did we?
think so.
I was just looking like, wait a minute. Okay, I was
Okay,
making
so
objections to the minutes. Yeah, to the minutes that we show that Anne-Marie Henriksen and Margaret Carey did not come to the meeting. Not the agenda.
that is true. That is true. So let me put that on rewind. I says the agenda comes first.
Okay.
Okay. Are there any objections to tonight's agenda? Okay. So since I see no hands, the tonight's agenda is adopted. Now for the minutes for April's meeting. Now, Beverly, you had an objection saying that 2 people did not appear.
That's correct.
Okay. So that can be edited at later. Are there any other objections to the April minutes? Seeing none, that is adopted with the amendments that we requested. Okay, what's next? Okay, announcement. I have one announcement. I was at the PSA 5 meeting last week, and the commanding officer of PSA 5, Captain Callahan, he announced that there is a new policy towards finding homeless people sleeping in NYCHA building hallways, especially chronic offenders, that people that keep coming back and they keep taking them out. These people will now be arrested, and that they will try their best to get rid of whatever equipment they may have. If they're pushing a shopping cart, they will take the shopping cart and they will discard the contents. It's a small thing, but perhaps it will put a dent in the problem that many NYCHA buildings are having with homeless people sleeping in the hallways. I know this will not solve the homeless problem. That is a very complicated problem, but this is the new policy that NYCHA and NYPD is adopting for people sleeping in NYCHA hallways. That's it for me. Are there any announcements from the committee? Are there any announcements from the public?
I'm sorry, John. Beverly has her hand raised.
Okay, Beverly.
Mhm.
Yes, thank you, Chair. And Marlene, Mike, I had a question for you, John, regarding that new policy for the NYPD. Is that only for NYCHA? And will they be just doing that because they arrested them saying that it's trespassing? Because I know in the past, they just usually escorted them out the building.
Well, the thing is that it's basically NYCHA buildings, because that's where PSA officers basically patrol.
Okay.
And so the thing is, so they, as far as I know, they do not go in private buildings. They're responsible for patrolling the NYCHA developments. So that's the policy for NYCHA buildings that as of now.
Okay, so when they arrest them, they're going to arrest them as trespassers?
Most
Do you
likely,
know?
yes.
Oh, okay.
Most likely.
Oh, okay. Because I know there's a lot of private buildings that's having that same problem. And it's the same people that keep coming in the same, gets in the building over and over again. And I know from experience, they just usually escort them out, and they usually don't even let them take, they won't make them take their private items with them. You know, it's usually up to the building. That's what we've been experiencing. So I was just kind of curious that, you know, now if they're doing that for NYCHA and they doing it for trespassing, because I, you know, like I said in the past, they was just escorting them out, but they will get back in and you tripping over them in the stairway, you know, the next morning.
Well, with private buildings, most likely, depending on where it is, that's probably they're patrolled by the 2.5 and the 2.3.
Mhm.
So the thing, so I'm not sure what their policy is.
Okay,
But the thing is, but as far as the PSA officers and nights are concerned, that's the new policy.
okay, thank you, John.
Any other questions? Dawn, you have a question?
I just wanted to piggyback off what Ms. Pabon was saying, because at the Public Safety Committee, this comes up a lot, as you could imagine. And I do believe, as of the last meeting where the DA's office was there, the hallway trespass program was discontinued, which for some private buildings means that guests of people who live there or other people can be in the hallways, and that's like a main way that people sell drugs in some of the private buildings, is being able to like be in the hallways. So I think we should maybe bring this up at the public safety meeting, because the last thing I knew, the DA's trespass program for safe hallways was discontinued, and that means that if somebody's in your hallway, I guess unless they're actively committing a crime, you can't really do anything about it. I could be wrong, but if someone could correct me, I believe the DA's office was asked about this too for private buildings.
Okay, well, with private bills, that, like I said, that would have to come through the 2.5 and the 2.3. But Xavier, you have your hand up?
Yes, thank you, everyone, and I hope this finds you well. To answer your question, Dawn, is that the reality is, and you know this, but for everyone who's attending, PSA 5 covers all of our public housing or NYCHA developments. And for those, whether you're in the 2.5 or the 2.3, they would handle all the trespassing complaints. But currently, right now, according to DI Hennings, when I attended the 25th Precinct Council meeting, is that they have tools at their disposal. So, for example, if it is a homeless person, they will try to get DHS out there. And if if they refuse DHS services, there are options they can bring to the table, but they did not want to elaborate at that point in time. So I think it would be well within our purview and remit to call that out and say, listen, we need to know, because we're having some pushback from the DA saying, listen, this is the letter and interpretation of the law. They're part of the executive branch, and they need to be activated in the best way possible. How can we work together? So I think that's a good recommendation, Don. And that's what I would recommend this committee not defer, but work in tandem with public safety and say, hey, if we can't find a tenable agreement for our precincts and how they can function with our landlords who are trying to maintain safe housing, what policies need to be changed? And then that's a question that can be a joint genesis from these two committees. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Xavier. Any other questions or comments? All right. Are there any other announcements from the public or from the committee? Okay, so next thing, we'll head on to informational updates. Are there any informational updates from the committee? No hands raised. Are there any informational updates from the public? Okay, we're cruising right along here. Okay, next thing we'll do, we'll go straight into presentations and discussions. First one is an informational discussion based on in reference to residents to preserve public housing. Mr. Jenkins, is it Marquise Jenkins?
Yes, exactly right.
I didn't want to mess up your name, sir.
You did great.
Mr. Jenkins is from the Residents to Preserve Public Housing. The members of this group hold meetings which highlight their opposition to the rental assistance demonstration, otherwise known as RAD, and the permanent affordability commitment together programs. Additional NYCHA developments have been selected for RAD and PAC. Mr. Jenkins is here to discuss those developments and and what he and the organization thinks. Mr. Jenkins, if you're ready, the floor is yours.
Thank you. May I, may I have some share? Let me see if I can do a share screen. Yeah, can you make me give me the ability to share my screen?
Share your screen, Mr. Jenkins. You have the ability.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
So first and foremost, I definitely want to thank you all for welcoming me into your space, into your planning space, into the space that you use to protect and advance the needs of the community. As was mentioned, my name is Marquise Jenkins. I'm a community organizer, and I have the honor and privilege of working and leading the Residents to Preserve Public Housing. The Residents to Preserve Public Housing is a citywide resident-led group of public housing resident leaders, including members of NYCHA's Citywide Council of Presidents Board. We aim to preserve public housing by advocating for adequate funding, improving the quality of services, and increasing resident decision-making authority. So the Residents to Preserve Public Housing started in August of 2020, directly in response and in opposition to NYCHA's Blueprint for Change proposal. We looked at that Blueprint for Change proposal, we dissected that Blueprint for Change proposal, and in the end, we came to the conclusion that this was a bad plan and that we needed to do everything we can to stop this plan from being implemented. We are against NYCHA's Blueprint for Change proposal because, one, the changes were put forth without the input of public housing residents, which is required by the 964 rules and regulations. Those 964 rules and regulations are unique to public housing residents. They are the federal rules and regulations that tell a resident they have the right to organize, they have a right to space to organize, they have a right to funding to support their organizing. They have succession rights, right? Their children can take over the apartments in the event that someone dies. It also talks about capping the rents at 30% so that public housing residents are not paying too much in rent. All of these rules are codified in the 964 rules and regulations, and NYCHA bypassed those rules by not including the residents as they were thinking about and creating this Blueprint for Change proposal. To make matters worse, they also introduced this plan during the height of COVID-19. Until this day, we still can't safely communicate the facts and details of this plan to all NYCHA residents. The trust. A big component of the Blueprint for Change proposal is the creation of a public housing preservation trust or public benefits corporation to replace the New York City Housing Authority. In order to create this new entity, state law is required. And if the state allows the Housing Authority to create this public housing preservation trust, this trust is going to do two things. One, it's going to convert that Section 9 apartment into a Section 8 apartment. And two, using the Section 8 voucher along with our property, they will leverage those two items to take out a mortgage, leaving us vulnerable to foreclosure. And then finally, along with the RAD and PAC program, as you know, the RAD and PAC program was approved by the federal government, I believe in 2016. And the federal government gave the New York City Housing Authority the ability to convert 62,000 units from Section 9 to Section 8, while also transferring those units over to private management. So 62,000 units are being transferred and privatized under the PAC program. If the blueprint is able to move forward, every single public housing apartment in New York City will be converted from Section 9 to Section 8. In other words, we will have no more public housing in New York City. Alternatively, since we've been stopping and pushing back on this plan, we've been calling on all levels of government to step up to protect and preserve public housing. You may have heard a lot about the $80 billion that we were pushing for from the federal government in the Build Back Better. That bill is not dead, but it certainly have lost its legs and is not moving. On the city level, we have been calling for the removal of Gregory Ross. The man gets paid $400,000 a year. Let me be clear, that is more than what we pay our mayor. That is more than what we pay the governor. And it is unacceptable, the quality of work that we are getting from this man. Looking at his response to the COVID-19 pandemic alone, it's just shameful. Public housing residents were hit twice as hard when you compare the population to the rest of the city. We got hit with twice as many COVID cases where people were infected with COVID. And we also got double the death rates or COVID-19 related deaths in public housing. And rather than spending money to do the necessary repairs and do the necessary cleaning and sterilizing of the developments, this chairman spent $250,000 to try to sell this plan to you. Now, the state has been the biggest, for lack of a better word, they've been the biggest devil here, in that we haven't seen adequate funding from the state going back to 1998. When public housing was doing well and was seen as a good program, the city and the state started to create public housing developments. The state in particular had 15 developments that they created. And in 1998, decided that they no longer wanted to pay operating dollars for those 15 developments. In over 7 years, we've only seen $750 million from the state. But we decided to launch a full-out campaign against the state for 3 reasons. We knew, one, that the state was considering legislation, and we wanted to make sure that we didn't allow that Public Housing Preservation Trust legislation to be enacted into law. 2, we also knew that the state was negotiating the budget for this year and for next year. And 3rd, we knew that our state legislators were up for re-election in June. And for those reasons, we've launched a full-out campaign towards the state. And our demand for the state was, of course, no to the Public Housing Preservation Trust. We also know that NYCHA's problems isn't solely lack of funding. There's been a huge history, a long history rather, of mismanagement and corruption. And so we are asking for a comprehensive, independent audit of NYCHA so that we can document every penny that comes in and every penny that gets spent. As it relates to the money, we are asking for $3.4 billion for capital funds, and we want that money to come every single year. And then we are also asking for $2.8 in operating dollars. This was our ask of the state. So we launched our campaign. We went up to Albany. We did a protest in front of the governor's office on 41st Street. We've sent letters, thousands of letters to state senators and assembly members. We had 2 legislative briefings, one for the assembly and one for the Senate. The governor in her preliminary budget allocated $0 for public housing. We got the state Senate and the state assembly separately in their one house budget to propose $500 million for public housing. It then went before the governor, the Speaker of the Assembly, Carl Hastings, the Majority Leader of the Senate, Andrea Stewart Cousins, and that $500 million got boiled down to $350 million. Now that is much needed funding that we fought very hard to get. And while I wasn't anywhere near what we wanted, we certainly are giving ourselves credit for raising that number from 0 to $350 million. But to add insult to injury, not only did the state not give us the adequate funding that we need, but they allow $600 million in tax dollars to be used to build a Buffalo Bills stadium to the benefit of the billionaire owner. What kind of world are we living in when we could prioritize a football stadium over housing that is literally killing people? So the Public Housing Preservation Trust legislation, we have been fighting, as I mentioned, going all the way back to 2020. The Public Housing Preservation Trust legislation was first introduced in December of 2020. We organized, we mobilized, and we testified. And we told our legislators we did not want this legislation. So we blocked it in December. They came back with the legislation again in 2022 of March, trying to pass this legislation. And again, we mobilized, we organized, and we testified. And we blocked the legislation from being passed in March of 2022. And when they couldn't get it through the legislature, they tried to pass this legislation through the budget. And guess what? We mobilized, we organized, and we testified to stop this plan from going through the budget. But do you think they got our message? Absolutely not. Now the Housing Authority is trying to pass this legislation before the legislative session ends in June. Now the residents have been very clear since day one with all the issues that we have. We have written to all 12 of these assembly members, and they have ignored us. We are continuing to fight to stop this legislation. This legislation is a backdoor to privatization. It's a backdoor to privatization because it does 2 things. One, it provides a mechanism for our homes to be foreclosed on. And 2, it creates a mechanism designed to generate profits for lenders. What do I mean by that? We can simply get the money that we need from the federal government, but the federal government doesn't want to give us the money that we need. The state doesn't want to give us the money that we need. And the city doesn't want to give us the money that we need. Instead, they rather us borrow the money. Why? Because if we borrow the money, then their friends who we are borrowing that money from get to collect interest on all the money that we are borrowing. To make matters worse, the city just released this budget, and this is the last thing I'm going to say before I take any questions. The city council has a hearing coming up. The mayor just released his executive budget. Now, I want you to remember why we got into RAD and why this blueprint is being proposed. The New York City Housing Authority says they have a $40 billion deficit. And they say we're not going to be able to get this money from the federal government. And this is why we need to go into a partnership with the private market so that we can leverage private dollars to address our need. So if we're going to go into RAD and give our developments over to private developers so that they can manage these developments and use their private dollars, why? Why does the mayor think it necessary to give these developments $1.2 billion? What happened to those private dollars that were supposed to address the needs in these developments that have been converted? Why are we throwing more government funding towards a development that's being managed by a private landlord? Does the mayor care more about keeping public housing public? Or does he care more about supporting these private developers? The fact of the matter is, our city, our state, and our federal government has the money that we need to fully repair and modernize public housing. The question is, why isn't public housing their priority? So thank you for this opportunity to do this presentation. And I'd love to answer any questions you may have on public housing and the state of public housing.
Thank you, Mr. Jenkins, for the presentation. I have a couple of questions. Now, of the 62,000 apartments that you mentioned that will be undergoing RAD, how many of them, if you know, are in East Harlem?
I don't know how many are in each borough. What I do know is that the Housing Authority has converted about 14,000 of the 62 thus far.
Mm-hmm. Okay, all right. Do you know the names of the private developers who have been chosen for this program?
I don't have the list, but I could send you the list of the developers that have been selected for a number of these developments. I can get that information for you.
That would be appreciated. And also the thing is that I know you've mentioned briefly the new administration, but what have they proposed for NYCHA, and in particular the PAC program? Are they in favor? Are they looking forward to being enacted? Or
we believe that the mayor is in fact in support of both the RAD program and the blueprint, even though he told us otherwise when he was a candidate running. As I mentioned, the mayor released his executive budget, and in that executive budget is $1.2 billion for RAD and PAC developments.
And also to piggyback something that Mr. Jenkins said a few minutes ago, there is a city council budget hearing on public housing tomorrow afternoon at 1 p.m. It's on. I believe it will be televised on the city council's website, and if you have Verizon Fios, it's on channel 24. So if you get a chance to see it, live or later on, I would encourage you to see that meeting. Are there any questions from the committee? Dawn?
Thank you so much, Marquise. I really admire your approach, and I admire your dedication. You have brought all the data forward, you have all the information, and I'm just so glad that you are staying with your group and staying in the leadership of your group. It's very important. So just want to start with that. And then, excuse me, I guess what I have to say is more of a comment, because if we can dig more into what Marquise is sharing and some of the groups that he's working with are sharing, then we could really understand this from I say the correct point of view. But I do notice that in our own district, we have electeds who are in favor of the plan, and we probably need to bring that up as an agenda item so that we can understand why our local electeds are interested in this plan. But one thing I did want to share is that for many years, I did work at NYCHA for the FEMA grant, and that was for Hurricane Sandy. When I did that work, FEMA expected us to tell them how many residents we spoke to, when we spoke to them, how many showed up. We had to do a live transcript. We had to show that we had engaged residents for what was going to happen at their building, how much money, how much time, and the residents were supposed to be included in every aspect, from should the boiler go on the roof, should the HVAC be in the basement. And so I headed up the community engagement group for that $3 billion grant. And at the time, my understanding was that NYCHA residents were to be fully engaged. And not just you invited them, but you invited them, you got 10% of the population. You could show which things the residents got to choose. Like in some cases, the residents got to choose, okay, where is the basketball court going to be relocated to? Or where is this going to be relocated to? Or where do you, some stuff was meaningful to them, some stuff was not, but the point is that this is my understanding of how things were supposed to work. And I was a subcontractor of a consultant. And to me, like if the TA presidents weren't okay, if the elected officials weren't okay, if the residents weren't okay, then my job was not properly done. So I'm very worried about a situation where you can bring such a drastic change to the residents as if you kind of given up on them. And I know that what that is to give up on them, because I come from the Midwest, and our developments, Cabrini Green, you could go to any state. New York is the last state with public housing like this. And people have told me over the years, don't fear monger, don't tell people what happened in Chicago and Indiana, don't do that. But I have told people, listen, you have to be on top of this, because nobody thought Cabrini Green was coming down in Chicago. It is gone. And the results were disastrous. And the generation right now is feeling that work from is it 2 generations ago? Well, no, just 1 generation ago. And those people have never recovered from losing that housing. But they're quiet now, right? Because they're scattered all over the Midwest. So I don't want to take up too much time, but I do want to say that I'm very worried for the future of public housing based on what I've seen happen in the rest of the country. And second of all, I'm very worried that the residents have not been taken seriously in this very, very serious matter. I'm very concerned about that. So as vice chair of the housing committee, and obviously at the discretion of our chair, I would like to stay engaged with this matter and understand who is for it and who is against it and why. So that's my comments. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for bringing that up. I mean, it's interesting that you mentioned Sandy, because we also know that they used the Hurricane Katrina, to tear down the public housing in New Orleans, right? And we knew that public housing was built so well that actually protected people during the hurricane. It needed to be cleaned. It didn't need it to be destroyed, right? So there is, right? And I try not to lead with this as a statement, because I want people to know that I've done my homework. But if you are paying attention to what is happening around your community, right? As your neighborhood becomes more and more gentrified, as you go into these stores and you see things that used to cost 25 cents, now cost $6, our neighborhoods around us are changing. And the only stubborn thing in the neighborhood that's in their way is public housing. Our public housing is aligned with the waterfronts. You know that they are beautifying our waterfronts. So there is, right? No matter how they're rapid, there is a real attack on public housing. And the real estate, right? The land that public housing sits on is valuable to the tune of $1 trillion they can get for developments, right? And we have to be very clear that that is exactly what is going on. What we are seeing, right, is a concerted effort, a strategy that started with first defunding public housing. 40 years of being defunded. Then you have no oversight. You have decades of mismanagement and corruption. And now they want to put us in a place where they're saying our homes are inhabitable. Because in order for them to move forward and convert these units to Section 8 and to utilize the tenant protection voucher, these apartments have to be classified as obsolete. HUD must do an inspection and classify these units as obsolete. So what's happening now? NYCHA is deliberately not doing repairs so that we can fall into that category. Right? So this is not just a matter of we need to use whatever plan that's in front of us so that we can save public housing. This is about blocking the privatization of public housing. Now, this is controversy, but I'm going to say it very clear. We are fighting for adequate funding for public housing. But our priority, even above getting the funding from the city, the state, and federal government, is blocking this plan from going forward. Because this plan creates a backdoor for our homes to be foreclosed on, for them to be classified as not livable, and for them to be given to private developers. This is our home. We want to talk about all the negative people who live in public housing, the welfare queens, the drug dealers, etc. The fact of the matter is only 11% of public housing residents receive subsidies. Only 11%. We pay more in rent as public housing residents in New York City than some people pay for their mortgages in other states. We are not getting a handout. This is our homes. We need to protect it. And then finally, what we have to recognize is the power we have as a voting bloc. 1% of the public housing vote can determine who will be our mayor. And if we begin to mobilize and organize the public housing vote, then those elected officials will find it very difficult to ignore us and sell our land from right up under us.
Thank you, Mr. Jenkins. Mr. Steph?
Hi, yes. Thank you so much for giving us this information. I just want to understand better. I think you had said something about 1.2 million was being given from the mayor to the RAD program or something of that. Can you better explain that so I can understand?
Sure, I'm even gonna try to pull it up in the mayor's budget. So the mayor's budget, let me preface that by saying that I still need to do a deep dive into the mayor's budget. But when you go and you pull up the mayor's executive budget and you do a quick search, right? So you open it up and you press Control F and the search button comes up. I put in NYCHA to see how many times NYCHA was referenced in the executive budget. It was referenced 6 times. And I believe it was the 4th time that NYCHA was referenced. It clearly states that the mayor wants to allocate $1.2 billion to RAD impact developments.
I'm sorry, you said billion.
1.2 billion with a B.
And the quote that is necessary for us to be okay and not need to be in RAD or PAC is how much is it? 2 billion, 2.4 billion?
What my calculations is based off of NYCHA, what NYCHA says, right? If we believe that NYCHA has a $40 billion deficit,
40 billion, okay.
NYCHA has a $40 billion deficit. NYCHA also called this blueprint a 10-year plan. So $40 billion, 10-year plan, divide 40 billion by 10. What do you get? $4 billion a year. Are you telling me from the city, the state, and the federal government combined, we can generate $4 billion a year? So that's really what the ask is, right? Each of them can give us 1.5, 1.8 billion dollars every year, and we would address this financial crisis. They want to paint the picture that we don't have the money.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Are there any other hands raised? Beverly, you have your hand raised?
Yes, I guess, thank you so very much, Mr. Jenkins. This is an eye opener, but while I'm hearing you speak, it's the same thing that's happening with a program called ANCP for home ownership of low income families. I mean, bringing private developers in when their sole purpose is to make money. I mean, I'm listening to this and I'm like, well, God, this sounds just like what the HBD is doing with the ANCP and the Till buildings.
Mm-hmm.
And they have the money, and like you said, if they break it down to 1.8 billion per year, they can fix it from each, government. It can be fixed, but they do make it seem as though it's the people that's the problem that's in these developments. And just 11% is getting subsidy in NYCHA. That I'm just floored at that. The way you would think is like everybody in NYCHA is being subsidized, the way they speak. And it's just this disinformation that they put out there to the people, and it's being pushed. And I'm so grateful for you. And I'm glad that more people now that we're getting into the deep understanding of budgets and where money comes from and how it's allocated, and looking at it in this critical way. And you're right, all of us together, we can make the change. We definitely can. So I applaud you with the information that you gave us. And private people and developments is there just for money and to displace. That's the bottom line. That's the bottom line. So thank you for the information.
Thank you very much. Are there any other questions from the committee?
Oh, I have one more question. So what is it that you need us to do as a community board? I guess that, having this information, what is it that the community board can do to bring this to the forefront and to make some serious changes?
Thank you. Definitely start with developments in your district, because each of those developments have unique needs. But I think overall and more broadly speaking, one of the roles that the community board does is you give recommendations on the city budget. And this, we are now in the mix of the city budget. It would be helpful, and whatever platform that you guys use, be it that you testify at the hearing tomorrow, be it that you write an official letter that goes to the city council, or there is a more public statement like an op-ed, I guess broadly calling on the city to adequately fund public housing. And then to the extent, right, that you want to dig a little bit deeper, right, opposing the RAD Pack blueprint as a community board, if you guys are able to do that. And one major thing that we're saying is that that $1.2 billion that the city was allocated to RAD should not be going to RAD and should only be used for public housing, should only be used for Section 9 public housing. And then the biggest thing, I think the biggest piece here is the city council had a hearing and uncovered that NYCHA is only spending 6% of the capital dollars that the city allocates to them. And you compare that to the rest of, to other agencies that receive capital dollars from the city, and they're spending closer to 66%. So there needs to be an audit, and we are calling on the city to help create an independent audit body whose responsibility is to conduct audits of NYCHA every single year.
Are there any other questions? Dawn, you have your hand raised?
Yeah, I just had one more thing, because I'm getting really like passionate and agitated about this, because if you look at what's happening all over New York, and if you look at what's happening to everybody, right? So during the pandemic, the rents, the private rents dropped in New York because nobody wanted to be here, right? And so people started moving around in different neighborhoods, and the rents now have increased. The private rents in New York have increased more than any place in the entire country, more than San Francisco, more than, you know, think of a wealthy area. New York City's private rents have increased more than any other city in the country. That is greed. We know that. And I just think that, you know, if you look at Astoria houses, I put something in the chat, I apologize, I'm not supposed to put anything in the chat, but Astoria houses, what they're trying to do with their waterfront, you know, there was attempts to show that, oh, Astoria houses are going to fall into the water. No, it's sturdy, you know. So there is this push to say, oh, these buildings are falling apart, and you have to be very careful about letting that narrative proceed, because it can be very dangerous to the people who have lived there forever, right? And the second thing I want to say, because this is to Ms. Pavon's point, and this is something that I want to bring up with Ayixa Torres next time I speak to her, if I can remember, is that down in the Lower East Side, the private housing and the public housing came together as a pact, right? So Two Bridges, and they have like a co-op. There are some co-ops and some NYCHA that have joined together, and they're like, you're not going to take either of us out, you know. And I think that's really powerful when you look to your neighbor and they're not NYCHA, but you say, you know what, we have the same problem. We have this Pathmark coming in, or we have these people who want to take the view away, and it's both of our views, right? It's this development and the private development. And I feel like we're going to have to start coming together. NYCHA is going to have to start coming together with co-ops, with 421A, with TIL, with everybody, because if we don't start banding together, kind of like how they're doing on the Lower East Side and other places, they will take us out piece by piece. I don't care how much money you make in this city. No matter how much money you make, you pay 50% of your income. So you're getting, you know, you're in a vulnerable place now. If you lose your job, you can't even go to public housing because the public housing won't be there. So I don't want to sound the alarm and just sound like, oh, but this is really concerning to me because I've been watching this for 15 years. And as these things play out, I see us moving in a direction that if we don't band together, we're going to be, it's not going to be good for our kids. I'll just put that out there. So
Yeah.
again, I want to thank you so much for being here. And that was, I'm going to hush now.
No, thank you for saying that. The interesting conundrum here is that the negative stereotype that's been placed on public housing, right, has also had an interesting impact, right? So if you have a public housing development here, the surrounding neighborhood, the cost of living goes down because the negative stereotype of living next to a public housing development. But guess what? The same is true in the opposite end. If we destroy these public housing, right? The entire market surrounding that public housing will see an increase. And everybody, all those Section 8 buildings, those private Section 8, everybody will see an increase. And so believe it or not, public housing is what keeps the neighborhood affordable. If you take public housing out, you remove that stigma from the neighborhood and they are able to rebrand the neighborhood and charge rocket rate prices for rent in these neighborhoods.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other questions? No other hands raised, Marlene?
You have one hand raised in the attendee section from Clemens.
Okay, the floor is yours.
Oh, hi. Yeah, I am Matter Clemens. I just had a quick question for Marquise. I guess it's for the board as well. To me, this seems like it's like a really political, social issue, and like what could we do? Or I guess maybe we should like start thinking about or moving towards a discussion of like what we could do to increase like the political weight or social weight that we have to make it more difficult to actually kind of privatize a lot of these public housings in Nigeria in general. I think sometimes we like have a lot of the like the informational down, and we understand it's unfair, but maybe we don't spend as much time on thinking about like what we could do or what are the pathways we could be engaged in that ensures that advocates such as yourself could, when you go to, or any of us who are in this space, when we go to our legislators, we have more weight or more capital, whatever we want to call it, that entitles them to take us more seriously. Obviously, Governor Hochul was given the deal to the Buffalo Bills and not public housing because she felt like if she felt that maybe she could get away with it politically. And I know obviously we're not supposed to say that in the community board, but to me, the fact of the matter is that that's kind of why we see these things happening, because we just don't have the weight that we would need to ensure that these things don't happen. And so I don't know, I guess it's open for everybody, but like, do we need to talk more about pathways that that we can engage in that ensures that we're building our weight so that we can be taken more seriously? I know everybody knows that my organization, trying to focus on the language that we use to talk about our civil issues, because I think language is an important part of civil society. And if we can kind of control the language, that kind of gives us an advantage. That's kind of what I'm trying to come at it, the direction I'm coming at it with my research center. But, is that talked, like, and Marquise, is that talked enough in the like public housing space, like how we can build on what we're doing right now so that when we go to our legislators year after year, it's harder and harder? Do you feel like that's something that's happening? That's for everybody. Anybody can answer that. That's kind of my question.
Yeah, no, I love that question. And one of the things that make RPPH unique is that we're not incorporated as a 501c3. And so we don't have restrictions. I wholeheartedly believe the fight for public housing is a political fight. We are losing because there isn't any lobbying on a major front being done for public housing. like the lobbying that's being done for Section 8, right? When Ms. Dawn was talking about what's happening across the country, we lost hundreds of thousands of public housing units across the country, and that's why public housing is the largest. We weren't always the largest. In fact, Puerto Rico was larger than us. And so, again, one of the reasons why we targeted the state in our campaign and not the federal government and the city was because of the fact that we were in election season, right? And what has given us leverage, right, is that politicians care about two things. They care about donations and they care about votes. And what we have been able to do in leveraging this time is we have been speaking to all of the candidates. So an example is Senator Brian Kavanaugh was a target because he was the one on the Senate side to introduce the legislation. And it was because we started speaking to his opponents and making it very clear that his opponents have a shot in getting his job, that he realized the political threat he would face in if he continued to move this legislation. He did a complete 180, and he is now helping us move our budget demands. So we're taking full advantage of the political season now. And we know, right? Like this political season is going to last until June. So we need to do what we can do between now and June to make sure at the very least that this legislation doesn't go through.
Just quick follow-up. Marcus, I'd love to kind of connect with you outside of this. You know, we definitely looking to provide any tools that, you know, people like you in this space can use to sort of help, you know, do your lobbying. Just make your lobbying much more politically heavy. And our approach is to kind of ensure that the language that is used to talk about this issue is powerful, and we can kind of, you know, I feel as if like a lot of the housing conversation, there's like a lot of backdoor dealing going on where there's certain terms that benefit certain groups of people, but they don't benefit other groups of people. And so we want to call those kind of terms out. And we think that that's something that, so if we can connect offline, something, I'll send you a private message for your email. But thank you, appreciate it.
Yes, I'll put my contact information in the chat so you can call and or email.
One thing, the one thing is that the governor is from the Buffalo area, and she's a Buffalo Bills fan. That's why the Buffalo Bills got the money for the stadium. That's like if I was governor and me being a New York Knicks fan, I gave the Knicks a new arena. But are there any other questions?
I don't see any hands raised, John.
Okay, Mr. Jenkins, thank you for the information. We truly, and I know you waited a long time to get here because you were supposed to be on the agenda a couple of months ago, but we had such a jam-packed agenda. It had to wait until tonight, but we appreciate your information and your patience. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And I'm a firm believer in things happen for a reason. It was meant to have this conversation right here and right now. And that's evident in sort of making I'm going to get your name wrong. Is it Metternich? And just sort of meeting and building these relationships. So thank you all so much. And I know, right, that the conversation continues. So I want to continue to be a resource. So please reach out and ask me questions. But this is a two-way street. I'm going to be reaching out to you and seeking your advice and guidance as well. So thank you for having me today.
No problem. Oh, and one last thing, something that Mr. Jenkins said, I'm going to add a little bit more to it. The thing is that what can be done is that one, as Prince once said, all of us have to let our egos down and understand that we all need each other. And the thing is that once that happens, things might happen in a positive direction. Okay, but anyway, again, thank you, Mr. Jenkins. And now we will go on to old business. This is going to be good. Okay, we will now discuss the draft resolution for 421A tax exemption. The draft resolution was distributed to each committee member prior to this evening's meeting. Each member will have an opportunity to vote on the resolution, but as a general reminder, last month we saw and listened to presentations from the Community Service Society and the Housing Director for the New York State Senate. Sam Stein from Community Service Society explained that the 421A tax exemption is a state level law that applies to New York City and provides a gigantic tax break for new development. The exemption does not provide affordable housing. A majority of the units are market rate. This tax exemption can last as long as 35 years, which means that we'll still be paying for 2022's 421A tax break in 2057. Critics continue to argue that the program produces too little affordable housing at too high a price. In 2021, 421A cost the city $1.7 billion in uncollected property tax revenue. Hallie Chu, who is the Housing Committee Director for the New York State Senate, explained Governor Hochul's plan to replace 421A when it expires on June 15th of this year with the Affordable Neighborhoods for New York program. ANNP would keep the structure of the tax exemption in place, but would alter the affordability levels and durations. There are three options under ANNP. Option A applies to rental projects of more than 30 units. Full tax exemption for 25 years with up to 3 years of pre-construction benefits, and at least 25% of the units must be affordable. Average affordability is at 56% AMI. Option B applies to rental projects of less than 30 units. Full tax exemption for 25 years with up to 3 years of pre-construction benefits. At least 20% of the units must be at 90% AMI. And option C is for home ownership projects, co-ops, and condos. 40 years of full tax exemption, affordability period post-construction with up to 3 years of pre-construction benefits. All units must be sold to households at or below 130% of AMI, both initial and subsequent sales within the exemption period. The home buyer must live in the unit as a primary resident for at least 5 years, and the building service employees must be paid prevailing wages. Okay, I will open the floor to discussion from the committee. Any questions, any comments? Beverly?
Yes, thank you, John. Where were you reading that from? Was that something that was given out to us? What you was just reading?
Well, no, actually, this is something that a piece of information that I received with the help of Marlene. She does great work, and she does a lot of stuff. Does a lot of research, and the thing is that's why I think she's invaluable.
Yes, she is.
I'm sorry, John, just really fast, if I may. Beverly, yes, I outside research absolutely before every single meeting. But you can also find a lot of information in these presentations that were done last month from Sam Stein and Hallie Chu. It's on the website.
Okay.
Just go to the Housing Committee's meeting last time and you'll find both of their PowerPoint presentations. And they're very clear, very concise presentations, and all that information is in there.
Yes, okay.
Thank you, Marlon.
Thank you. The choices that they gave, 1, 2, or 3, don't seem that they're still affordable to the mass of people that needs it. So I don't even know if Governor Hochul's alternative to the 421A is even helpful. And like you said, John, we're going to be paying for the ones that has already got the benefits at least until 2056. So this one for me it's really kind of hard to grasp because it's such a big beast. it's a beast. And I was looking at one of the programs, one of the information that I got from the Association of Neighborhoods and Housing Development. And I tried to send you guys a copy of it. And what it was doing was 421A units advertised on Housing Connect from 2019 to 2021 versus the rent burden by AMI. And it was interesting that they had that 130% of the AMI, the number of 421 units was over 5,000 units. So these are people that's making, let me see if I can see this, $139,000 in income, but anything for 10% for the extremely, that outweighed everything below that. I mean, easily, the ones that's below that's not even adding up to 2,000 units, you know? So the fact that they have still this 130% AMI in here, and most of the buildings units went to that, is just astounding. The other thing I have a problem that I came across this other document from the New York City Independent Budget Office. It is dated in 2011, but it was, what was striking to me is that it was telling you about a 421A fund. I don't know if that's still happening, where, you know, another organization puts money into this fund so we can have more affordable housing. But at the bottom of it, it spoke how because of the 421A that passed through the city from city capitals, that $115 million was taken from the TIL program in order to fund this. And I just found that very interesting that as far as 2011, this has been affecting home ownership for low-income families under the TIL program.
Well, you see, the problem is that, well, not problem is that you said this is a beast, but you consider this has been around for more than 50 years.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a burdensome program, plus with possibly a somewhat burdensome solution.
Yes.
So the thing is that it's a large thing, and also it was supposed to encourage affordable housing, but it didn't, and it's like a pendulum. The thing is, in the beginning it started, but then it went toward home ownership, and now as it's gotten older, it's going back the other way. So the thing is that they're trying to provide relief for as many people as possible, and the thing is that's why there's so many options. So it's just a thing where it all depends on what the state legislature can come up with and can get out of the state budget.
Right. But it's still, even with Mr. Jenkins speaking, it seems like whenever, you know, I know the city has been trying to encourage private developers to make more affordable housing, but from what I'm gathering thus far, it hasn't been working out to benefit people who really need it, except for the ones that's building these houses, and private developers are not really working for the city.
Well, the problem is that their catchword is profitability.
Yeah.
And the thing is that if it's not profitable, they're really not really interested in it. So that's one of the problems. Bye. Okay. Anything else, Beverly?
No, that's it. I
Okay.
just don't know how to go forward with this.
Okay. Thank you, Dawn.
Yes, I was thinking, I hope this time, because I know that a few people visited, they weren't able to speak at one of the last meetings, so I don't want to take up too much time, but it seems to me that we need to, like you both have pointed to, we need to narrow down our resolution to the people who bought co-ops or condos, I'm not sure, with the understanding that they would not have such a big price increase, because we could talk about the renters and then we could talk about the developers. But from what I understand from the last presentation, which was excellent, it was a really good use of this committee's time. There are options, viable options for the people who come to this meeting and who are very concerned, rightfully so. There are viable options. And so I want to know, one, could we just focus in on our small homeowners, right, who live in their units? And two, does anybody talk to HPD or any of these other groups to see if when you're going to expire and what your options are? Because it seemed like there were some options that came out, and I feel like if you have a connection with HPD, they would just tell you right away, well, here's what you can do, here's what you can't do, without you having to get a lawyer. So I guess, Chair, I don't know how to put that, but I feel like to try to tackle the whole 421A is almost too much. We know our community members, what they're worried about. Like, can we just drill down to those issues, or what do you think?
Well, the thing is that it's something that I think I probably should have considered, that how many are homeowners and how many are in affordable, if there's any affordable units in the district. Because the thing is that it's going to affect everybody, especially if the tax abatement ends within the next couple of years. Because that's the one thing. Because let's put it this way: anybody whose building opened in 1987, their tax abatement ends this year. So the thing is that means each advancing year, they're 1 year closer to having their tax abatements ending. Beverly?
To piggyback off of what Dawn said, for the ones that's, their tax abatement is ending, each year, it gets closer to them ending. How come, like she said, why HPD or the city, anyone, the legislator, don't tell the other people what else is available for them right now? It is, where will we get that type of information on what people can get? So, because I know if they're in place and they're elders or seniors, they can probably get an abatement now, but do the people know that? What's on the table now that can be used, for people now?
And basically the thing is that it's just one of these things where it's a thing where it's like waiting to the last minute, and sometimes it's how things are done. Like it comes up, and then it's sometimes people that some politicians and some government officials, they look at things and they really don't think that there's a lot of urgency. But the thing is that the people who are involved in those things, they feel the urgency. And it's just a difference. It's a difference of opinion. And you're right. The thing is that perhaps I should check with HPD and see what can be done for these residents. Marlene.
Thank you, John. So the resolution where it says therefore be it resolved, after I speak, I'll just go ahead and pull it up because I'm not sure if you guys remember it, but it's asking for CB11 to support a perpetuity clause. That means it will make 421A be indefinite, no end date, no expiration, to be included in the new 421A or whatever is created after 421A. So just to be clear, that's what you all are voting on tonight. If you choose to entertain this tonight, If it's within your right to table this again, you don't have to vote on it tonight. If you still need, an additional 30 days to decide, but that's what you all are voting on. And the current resolution that was written specifically speaks to residents that have benefited from the program, specifically to ownership. So condominiums and cooperatives. So I'll go ahead and pull it up if you guys just need a refresher. But that's what you're voting on for this thing to be indefinite.
That's appreciated, Marlene. Thank you.
I believe Xavier's hand is up, Don, if you'd like.
Xavier, please.
So, John, thank you everyone for bringing this up under old business. I think my question for this committee is, has there been a deeper dive and statistical analysis on the long-term impact for how it would provide affordability when it comes to rental programs? It doesn't seem like it. Thank you for pulling that up, Marlene. As she mentioned, there's no commentary on that. And I know the last meeting we were looking to dive into that, especially since the governor's proposed plan seemed more of a 421A reincarnate. I can say that we have enough track history when it comes to 421A when it comes to condos and co-ops, but I think with whether or not it provides truly affordable housing is a question that remains unanswered. So that is the question the committee has a deeper analysis occurred on that.
Thank you, Xavier. Okay, now, so as Marlene says, the thing is that we are voting on if we vote on this resolution, is to not have it end, at least until, and I guess you're trying to say, well, listen, you want it to end, and I understand it's costing the city almost $2 billion in tax revenue, but the thing is that at least have something to replace it. Because the thing is that there are a lot of people out there that their fees are going to skyrocket, and the thing is that that's not a good thing. And at least have something to replace it where people, the residents, are more at ease. That they have peace of mind that their fees are not going to go up. So the thing is that we just ask them, don't let it end. Just but before you eliminate it, come up with something. I mean, I understand you guys want the money, but the thing is that but the people want their homes as well.
You have John. Beverly just put her hand up, but just know that there are two hands in the attendees.
Yes.
Recognize Beverly.
Okay, Beverly?
No, Judith had her hand raised for a while.
Okay. Judith?
Yes, hi. In answer to, I don't remember who asked the question, especially those in the 421A buildings along Madison Avenue, along the side streets here. As you know, in East Harlem, there's about 500 lots of 421As that are going to affect all of those people just in East Harlem. The rest of the city, I mean, I'm sure there are many more, but someone had asked, even if the seniors who are on fixed incomes and are here at least 20 years, is there something that they can do now before their maintenance goes sky high? There isn't. We've already checked that. As long as the building is still under that program, we cannot, even the seniors cannot get any other abatement. They have to wait till the abatement is completely expired before they can get any help. And that is causing a big problem because people aged in place owning these apartments. So that was the answer to whoever asked that question, if there was something that they can do now. They won't do anything as long as the program is still in existence.
Well, the thing is, thank you for that, but the thing is that if the building's been open for 20 years, that means they have another 15 years of tax abatement. And I can understand
No, only 5. It's 25-year abatement.
Okay, well, the thing is, even if it's 25, the thing is that I can understand why they say there's really nothing that they can do. So the thing is that means if, in reality, if there's another 5 years, they have to wait at least 4 years in order to find even address that. But what that also means is that their abatement is not going to end June 15th.
Well, in 2024, which is only 2 years, the increments from the abatement will start. So they're going to start before the expiration of the 25 years. So that means they're going to start paying part of those taxes. And for the seniors on fixed incomes who are here 20 years, that's, like I said, who aged in place, that's going to hurt because we don't know in 2024 how much of that tax, I think it might be 20% of whatever the tax is going to be, that's going to hit them in 2024.
Well, the thing is, that's why we're voting on this to say, like, keep it in place until you come up with something to help these residents. The thing is that so that's what we're voting on. That's what Marlene was explaining to us. So the thing is, so basically, we're just trying to stop this from expiring, at least until they come up with a solution for it.
Yeah, it honestly, it was a flawed plan, and there was no backup plan for it. And it's hurting a lot of people in the East Harlem community, let alone the rest of the city or the state.
That's city law, that's city and state law for you. But okay, Xavier?
I just want to clarify because of the expiry date and how it succeeds Judith, and I direct this to you because my interpretation and consultation is that it's not going to have any immediate impact. So you're stating to the contrary to what legal has stated. So I'd like to know what insight has been provided to you that you can share with this committee, because in perpetuity is I think what this committee is debating at this point in time.
Right. No, I understand.
So what legal, who has presented legal interpretation to say there's an immediate impact because everyone else has stated otherwise?
It's in the offering plan that we all got. Many of us came into these buildings under the lottery. So we all got an offering plan. And in the offering plan, it states that increments will start in 2024. Even our managing agent has already apprised everyone in these buildings along Madison Avenue and the others, even some on 118th Street, that the increments do start before the actual expiration. That's just the way it was built. I mean, I have the offering plan. It's a big book. I can show it to anyone who wants to see it.
Thank you for sharing that. Just real quick, so I'll pass it back to John. It'd be helpful to have that shared with the committee and should have been shared at the onset of this resolution. So that allows us to come from an informed position. But again, the committee's charged with doing the
Right.
research for renters as well as co-op condo owners, which in this case is you're in an ownership position. So I think that
Well, many of us
yeah,
in this particular area are.
yeah, and not that we're unsympathetic. I just want to make sure the committee does their due diligence so that the executive doesn't have to step in to do any additional work. So that way the committee's doing its fair share. John, I'll leave it back with you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Xavier. Beverly?
Yes, my concern is, I'm hearing what Judith's saying, and I understand that is what you're saying, John, that, until they get a better plan. But this is all based on the property taxes, and it's nothing that the city is doing to change the assessment of these properties, because if none of that is being considered
Right.
to change the assessment, because that's where the problem is coming from. And I know they've been speaking about a long time to change the property tax laws and how they assess buildings. And I think if I don't know what branch would deal with the taxes, I guess it would be the state, to change the way they assess the building, especially in certain areas, and certain income areas, would be a help to change how they assess things. Because I see that sometimes you have the property taxes in East Harlem is the same as one on Millionaire Row,
Exactly.
So how, that needs to be, that's where the bulk of the problem is. It's not the programs that they come up with, it's the assessment of the properties. That's the biggest problem that needs to be addressed.
And plus the fact you have this some city officials will say, well, this is the state's problem, and people point fingers and stuff like that, and nothing gets done. But the thing is that, and the people who stuck in the middle are the residents.
True, but like someone just put in a post regarding HPD. HPD has the ability to work with the Department of Finance to fix, to help out in this area right now, because even under what we asked for the TIL program is like for the J51 tax abatement, but that's something that the city of, especially HPD, can ask and work with the Department of Finance, and they need to be pulled to the rug in order to do that for, because of this 421 being, expired, and people that's been in it since 1986 is getting ready, they're getting closer to have to pay these taxes. They need to step up their game to do this, and it's in their powers to do so.
Yeah, but you're right. And the thing is that it's a thing where being cooperative with each other works, but for some strange reason, it sometimes it doesn't happen, or it doesn't, or let me change it. It doesn't happen as often as it should.
So can we put that in a resolution for them to work together to make these type of changes, or offer these type of tax incentive for the people that, that's in their preview to do, while these the 421 is being expired? Can that be part of the resolution?
Well, I'm going to ask someone that's a whole lot wiser than I am that question. Marlene, I'm going to ask you this question. The thing is that I know it's a giant ask, and the thing is that usually government doesn't listen to people anyway, even though we pay them. The thing is that could it be placed in the resolution that that we can hope that HPD and the state work together to define a solution to this
And Department of Finance, yeah.
You can put it in the resolution, but whoever makes the motion has to state that the resolution is being revised.
So they have to make, we have to make a friendly amendment.
Yeah, no one made a motion yet.
No, I know.
You guys have not voted.
But
Yeah.
whoever does that, this is what you call making a friendly amendment.
Right, that's fine. That's what you would have to do with this resolution, because it does, the language doesn't exist.
Right.
What's asked right now is for this to be indefinite without any expirations ever.
Okay.
And it's speaking to, really to home ownership.
Right.
Xavier's point,
Right.
it's not speaking to rentals.
Yeah,
Right.
that's another thing. Yeah, that's true.
Right. Because the thing is, the greater majority of the housing under this program for a long time were co-ops and condos. So, but one moment, Dawn.
I don't want to take away from the conversation because it looks like we're moving in the right direction. But for me, I don't know if I can vote on the resolution as it stands, because when Hallie was here last time, it seemed like pretty clear that 421A is ending and something else is beginning. Like that's not even a debate anymore. But there was these options like reverse mortgage. I was looking for my notes and some other options that would give immediate relief, and you don't have to wait that long to look into your options. So I was wondering, and I apologize because I didn't do a deep dive between the meetings. And when I saw the resolution today, I said, oh, shoot, I do feel bad because I know this is very urgent for a lot of people, but
Those were the options that I read off earlier. So
right. But I was hoping maybe we could have like a conference call with Hallie and just make sure we understand what she's saying, because I heard her say that 421A is already done. The new project is a different name. It's a new, and there are options for people to grandfather them into a tax abatement, but it's not going to be called 421A anymore. And so
I believe that's ANNP, I believe. But the one thing, but I hear a suggestion that someone is going to want to table this, so we do some more research. I'm sure that there are some people who feel that would feel a lot more comfortable doing that. Can I get a raise of hands on that from the committee about they would feel more comfortable if this was tabled for more research?
Oh, God.
it's just that Hallie was on the community board and she's like the top person. And I feel like I misunderstood what she was saying.
Okay. Okay, now what I'm going to need is a motion for someone to table this until the June meeting.
Oh, boy.
Do I have a motion from someone to table this to do more research?
I motioned to table it, but I also motioned that we work very diligently in between. And I apologize that I didn't between the last meeting and this meeting. So let me erase what I said. But my point is that I apologize that I did not clarify. I got really excited from the last meeting that there was all these options on the table. And what I was hearing is different than what I'm hearing from Judith about that there's no options right now. So I motion that we go ahead.
Not while these buildings and townhouses are still under the program. There are no options. You can't go to the Department of Finance or fill out a senior citizen homeowners. You can't do any of that because they're going to refuse you while the building is still in that program. And like I said,
is that what Hallie's explained to us? Because I didn't get that from Hallie.
No, Hallie didn't say anything about that. I'm telling you, I know. I went, and as you know, Dawn, because you were working for Robert Rodriguez, I went to Robert Rodriguez years ago about this with the offering plan, And he said, oh, you still have time, you could wait. Now he's not there, and it's really a mess.
Well, if I
because-
could just add one more thing, I called Robert, obviously, when this first came up, right? And he's not the assembly member anymore, but his understanding was that you guys could all get new regulatory agreements through HPD. Is that
Our regulatory agreement is through HDC.
okay? But can you get a new regulatory agreement that doesn't have the same language talking about you got to pay more now?
No, that is either the city or the state. We can't do that. It's got to be, I think, legislation. Is Tamika on the phone, on the call? She might be able to explain it better.
Well, that's where Robert left things, and I thought we would follow up with our legislators and figure out.
One moment.
Okay, sorry.
Marlene?
Oh, Dawn, so like I mentioned earlier, Hallie's entire presentation is on the website. So don't try to jog your brain or try to remember what she said. Just read her presentation. It was pretty concise and very clear for, just put in layman's terms. So in average person that doesn't work on housing policy, they can understand it. So that's clear. But Governor Hochul's plan is to replace 421A, to your point, on the onset of its expiration. So June 15th of this year, it's set to go away. And her plan is to replace it with the Affordable Neighborhoods for New York program, what John mentioned earlier when he preferenced this conversation, ANNP. And under ANNP, there are three options. Two of them reference rental, and the third option references the home ownership that you tried to jog your memory about. So you were correct about that. So you are right. They are trying to do away with 421A and replace it with something else that would also provide an abatement of a different nature.
So basically, this is a repeal and replace situation.
Exactly. So when you all do research for this resolution, you could thoroughly read the resolution and make edits to the resolution to have it speak to the research and what Hallie Chu, mentioned to you all last month, if you do choose to table this. And also, John, you don't have to motion, you could just table it. You can note it in the minutes that it was tabled to the next month, the next meeting for housing in June.
Okay, thank you, Marlene. Well, I'm making an executive decision in the interest of making the committee feel better. I'm ordering this tabled until the June meeting. And also the thing is, I will be reaching out to you, and we will basically do a, hopefully we can get a Zoom meeting. Marlene, I'll call you later on this week and see if we can get a Zoom meeting to discuss this sometime during the month.
No problem, sure.
Okay, well, that does
Can I
that.
add something to it? I'm sorry, I had my hand raised, Chair John. It's Tamika.
Okay,
All right, so since y'all gonna be tabling it, my suggestion is to reach out to the co-ops and the condo owners that's in the area to see if they have been increasing on their maintenance yet, so you can actually see the increases taking place. I live in a co-op building, and right now, even though our tax abatement is not yet to expire for another 4 years, they are instituting increases in our maintenance to cover the possible taxes that we have to cover in the 4-year time frame. So, I think we should look at everybody's co-op and condos paperwork to see where everybody stands, because not everybody is fortunate to be able to pay for those increment increases. Some of the increases is like 4%, some is 5%, some is 10%, some is 20%. For someone's like 65 and up, a 25% increase in their maintenance is kind of like they won't eat for the next month.
okay.
Tamika, to that, and John, I'm sorry. Yes, my building is getting a 6% increase in maintenance starting this month.
Mhm. All right, so like I said, the thing is that we will table this, we will meet, I'll be in touch with the committee and I'll be in touch with Marlene later this week and try to set up a date and also try to do research with the residents, with HPD and myriad other people who can be of assistance. Okay, with that done, the thing is that we also have a presentation from last month from HPD regarding the Till buildings in East Harlem.
Don, I'm sorry, before you move into Beverly, just real fast, Dawn has her hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry,
Oh,
Dawn.
no, it's okay. I'm just trying to understand for our neighbors, their increases have already started to hit. Your increases have already started to hit.
Yes, I can
So-
tell you, my first moved here, though, I'm sorry to cut you off.
No.
We
That's
moved
okay.
in here in 2009, our maintenance was $625. Now my maintenance is $1,200.
Wow. Okay, so that,
Yeah.
I just need,
And there's still mortgages attached. People
can you
still have.
share, if we reach out to you, can you share your agreements? Like, I know that's private information, but I feel like we have to narrow down to the people we're worried about. Like, I'm not as much worried about the rent people who come to rent next week or next year. I'm more concerned about the people who own now. And I think looking at the whole group as one is difficult, but drilling down to just our homeowners, like I know we have to think about our renters, but just if we could just drill down to like the specifics of the people that we know, right? And just be clear, then I would feel a lot better getting loud and ruckus about the situation. Because I feel like, all right, I know exactly what you're talking about. I know what your offering agreement was, what your regulatory agreement is, what, you know what I mean? Like I need that to understand the best way to proceed. And because it seems like you need the relief immediately. It doesn't, and it's different between saying that it expires in 2 years or expires in June. If you're already getting the hit, like, then we have to like really get to work, right? So, but I want to know, and I thank the chair for taking on the hard role. I do want to know from like someone like Hallie Chu's perspective, like what could help Judith, what could help Tamika? And then obviously that's going to help hundreds of other people. But if we could just narrow down to what they're going through and understand, it would help me. So if you can share, I saw Tamika said in the chat, she could share her offered agreement so we could kind of like understand why this is hitting her already.
Okay, well said, Don. Thank you very much. Xavier?
Thank you, Dawn, for opining on that, and everyone. Again, as I cannot express enough, it's not that we're lacking empathy. We, in fact, have loads and volumes of it. My point is that we want to analyze it, as Dawn has mentioned, with the scalpel, not a hatchet, and find out where those items are when it comes to 421A that we're working, how they can be improved upon, where the failures were in part when it came to rentals and affordability, et cetera, and so on. So that's, again, what I implore the committee to do. And thank you very much for Tamika and Judith for being willing to provide your offering plan so we can dive in as an example. And any resources you have that can be provided to this committee to do that research will help us do a better job as a board. Thank you, John, for your leadership on this, and Dawn as vice chair as well. And I'll leave it back to you all to finish up the meeting. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Xavier. Are there any other comments? I don't see any. So
I just got one more comment on that, please.
Okay.
In regards to the regulatory agreements and the leasing plan, I believe they called it. Aren't they all different depending on, so what, do we know anything that's common with all of them? Because from what I'm understanding, every offering plan and regulatory agreement are different depending on when it was created. So if we don't have something that's common with all of them, this is going to be a hard task as to how do we go forward, especially if we're going to be looking at two different plans that maybe Judith has or Tamika has,
Well, the thing is that Beverly, the best way that I can say this is that according to this, to this option for homeowners, excuse me, it's getting late, so I have a hard
Okay.
time speaking. The thing is that hopefully if this is what it's going to be, and hopefully that this gives them some relief, hopefully this will take place immediately. But the thing is that, let us do our research. Let us do our deep dive. Ms. Mapp, we appreciate you or offering your information to us. We definitely do. This way, this will help us make a better informed decision on this, and we can, and hopefully we can basically sum this up and get and hopefully get the residents get the relief that they need. Okay, and if that's it, there's one more thing. So the thing is that we also had a presentation last month from the HPD regarding the Till buildings in East Harlem. Beverly has some additional information she would like to share. Beverly?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I wanted to go over the answers that HPD gave us when we had these questions that we asked them, because a lot of the information that was presented to us were, from what I know of the program, was not correct. One of the things saying that the program of the Till program stopped in 2006. A lot of the Till buildings that I've spoke to and the residents had no idea or was ever told that the program had stopped. In fact, we were still going to meetings with the city council in 2017 on the Till program. So that information that they was giving was incorrect. I wanted to bring this up regarding, to just make things short, there's a lot of talk in the city council members that we're talking with for Till buildings that's getting interest into how the Till program has been defunded. They're looking into steps to try to find them, get the money, and we're asking for money to fund the Till program as it was originally intended. But right now I have all my papers because of the 421 all over the place. I'm just letting you know that there are some city council members who are looking into the Till program. It's a lot of a coalition of Till buildings who are asking for the funding. And I think that we collectively can push the issue, not just here, but in other community boards that has more Till buildings than we do. Because even with the request of the Till of the community boards asking for their request in the budget, I'm seeing that HPD tell us one thing and then tell another community board something else regarding their Till buildings. Like they needed more information from us, but in another community board, they was telling them that they's gonna fund the program. So I just think that is something that I'm gonna keep bringing up to the board, and I would appreciate the board giving even more support, like they did before in 2017 with a resolution, because we spoke about that before, and at a time in the future that we that we probably ask for another resolution for the support of the programs. And May of this month, there's a building not in our district, but in District 10 that's in the ANCP program. And Councilwoman Jordan is trying to have a meeting with the subcommittee on transferring that property into the ANCP program. The tenants do not want to be transferred into that program. So on May 11th, 2022, I think at 10 o'clock, there's going to be a subcommittee meeting and land use at the city council regarding 5 buildings that's going into the ANCP program. They supposedly had a meeting last week, but it was canceled due to the mayor having a press conference about his budget. But they are going to have it on the 11th. And it was a lot of people signing up to testify against the ANCP program. So I'll keep you guys updated as to what's happening with the council people that we're speaking with, that's on the coalition, that's working with the Till Building Coalition to support and fund the Till buildings. And that's that.
Thank you very much, Beverly.
Okay.
Okay,
I ask,
Yes.
Dawn?
no, just before you move on, or I don't know if you were about to talk more about it, but just so I understand, because I remember hearing, well, I remember some till issues in East Harlem going back to like 2014, 2015. But what do we want? The till residents do not want to be transferred into this program, right?
That's correct.
So what would they do instead? Like, what is our ask? That they continue, that they can own their homes, or like, what is our direct ask?
Our direct ask is to have the till construction monies and not a mortgage. That's the main thing. Just like when we talk about the RAD pack, how they get private developers to come in and then they change everything, and you got this mortgage. It was almost like he was talking about the till program and the ANCP program. For some reason, a lot of people think that the till program in the past was not funded totally by the city capital money and was very successful. Only because of the housing crisis that they changed. And now that I see that based on the 421A, some of the money that was allotted for the till has been cut short since 2011, to help fund the 421A program, so it's been really kind of crazy, the information that we're getting on how the till program has been defunded. And then, we're getting these mixed information about, they don't have the money for this, they don't have the money for that, but we're seeing where the money was going at and while we was defunded. Another ask that we're asking that the till buildings have the right to rent apartments. I mean, that's, besides funding, that we have the right to rent apartments now, because we're losing so much money. You have these apartments that's being warehoused, and under the ANCP program, as was spoken before, the till tenants are being relocated in the sponsors building. And the difference between the till rent and the sponsors rent is being tacked on to the construction costs. So that's something else that the tenants have to pay back. So we want the funding for the till construction. We want to be able to rent apartments now. And one of the other things we asked for, hold on, that HPD, we always spoke about this before. There's no accountability to HPD or for HPD on how they do their programs. They just tell us this is what it is, and that's that. They spend the money, and nobody knows where the money is going or how it was spent. So just like Mr. Jenkins was saying, it needs to be an audit. It needs to be an audit even for the TIL program. One of the other things that we've asked for with the TIL program, I almost finished, is that when we ask how much it costs for the ANCP program versus what it would cost for the TIL program, HPD never give us the answers. They won't show the books. They won't show the numbers on how much more the ANCP program. So we need accountability also from the HPD on this issue. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Beverly. Okay, now, okay, I feel like I'm in the middle of a city council here. Okay, I think that's it for old business. Is there any new business? One moment, please. There's no hands from the committee. Okay. Yes, Mr. Clemens?
Yeah, thank you. Just two quick things. If you have been on my website, we recently started a research journal where we're exploring different sorts of sentences and how they're used within the public space and the kinds of properties that they have. You're free to check that out and kind of see how we're talking about the world and whether you want to talk about that, talk about the world in that way. And the second thing is just to kind of piggyback off what I said earlier today as like a recommendation, but I encourage the community board, but the committee as well to sort of think about what could be done to ensure that when you do a resolution on these things, or you're talking about the TIL bill you're talking about, that whatever you do, these things are taken seriously, right? We don't want to, we like the community board is necessary for a lot of marginalized people's political existence, and being able to have the community board or your particular committee have some sort of weight behind what it's doing is really helpful for all advocates. And I'm encouraging you to think about that kind of discussion about what can we do next year that ensures that the work that we're doing or the clout or capital that we have as a community board really will force people, not force, but encourage people to listen to what the committee is saying and doing. And yeah, thank you for letting me participate. Looking forward to next meeting. Take care.
Thank you. Okay. If there's, are there any, no other hands raised? Okay. So if in that case, Marlene, if you would you call Roland so we can adjourn the meeting, please?
Yes. Stephanie Arroyo.
Here.
Thanks. Roger Flores is excused. John Green.
Here.
Jada Heredia. Alonzo Johnson.
Here.
Robin Krinsky.
Here.
Beverly Pabon.
Present.
Dawn Sanders.
Here.
And Candy Vivez Vasquez. Thank you, John.
Okay, thank you, Marlene. The next meeting of the Housing Committee will be on Monday, June 6, 2022 at 6:30 p.m. It'll be virtual as it has been for the last 2 years. And by the power vested in me by Community Board 11, I announced this meeting adjourned at 8:38 p.m. Enjoy your evening, everybody.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Okay.
Thanks so much, Marlene, for
You're
holding us
welcome,
down.
of course. You're welcome.